welcome to the History of Yesterday podcast. I'm here with Andrei. Both of us we are the creators of History of Yesterday and the ones who have been bringing a lot of the articles that you've been reading. And today we have a list of topics to talk about, and hopefully we'll get through all of them this time without as many difficulties as it took to get the intro going. So, Andrei, if you can start with the introduction of the first topic while I note down the timings.
Before that, I just want to say that this is the series of the podcast. We expect to do many episodes like this. We're going to go through a lot of controversial topics, many of the topics that we discuss within our articles that you can see published on the publication. And what can I say? I hope you guys enjoy. Please do understand this is the first time we are streaming. We are using a podcast, so we're trying to learn along the way all the bells and whistles that it has to offer. I hope that both of the streams are working on Facebook and on Twitch. Do comment if something is wrong or something goes wrong along the way, because like I said, we're still getting used to all the software that we are using. But I hope the cameras are working well and the microphones are well. For us, they are.
Yeah, obviously we're still getting used to everything. Hello to everyone in chat. We have Scrub Vader, Oscar on Twitch, Silent Control. As always, if you guys have any questions about the topics that we're talking about, leave them in chat. I'm on the Twitch chat. I can read any of the questions on there. Andre will be looking at our Facebook chat. So if you do need any questions to be answered about the topics that we talk about, do make sure to ask them in the chat.
I know we announced that this stream is going to be on YouTube as well, but for some reason we have to wait for validation to stream on YouTube. I don't know why that is. So the next podcast, which I presume is going to be this weekend, we will announce it on every social media platform where the next podcast is going to be. We haven't decided yet. Let's see how this one goes. But hopefully the next one's going to be on YouTube as well, because I know it's favored by many of our followers. So for today, we are starting with a very controversial topic, and what I've written lots about and many people have discussed is what happened to Hitler at the end of World War II. There are so many conspiracies out there that is just crazy, and the problem that I have as a publisher of history on the internet is that there are so many lies out there, and people just take for granted every piece of information they find because they think it's a reliable source if it's published on the internet, but they don't imagine that anyone can put anything on the internet without being verified by anyone. So we will go through a few of these conspiracies, ones that are a bit more down on earth and not crazy like him going to the moon or anything like that. The first one that I wanted to discuss, and I've written about many, many times now, is him escaping to South America, and more specifically Argentina. However, there have been some rumors that he was in Colombia as well, which we'll get to that later. Many people wonder, how can he end up there? But they don't know that the Germans were really good I'm not going to say allies, because they never partnered in war, at least in World War II, with the Spanish. They helped them with supplies, they helped them with information, especially information about the naval recruitments for the British Empire, British Naval Force, my bad, at the time. The other part is that they didn't really want to interfere into World War II because they already had enough trouble with the Spanish Civil War between 1936 and 1939, if I am right. I think I am. Do correct me if I'm not, but I think I am.
I'm just setting up everything. Could continue what you were talking about. Yeah.
You look a bit lost.
No, I'm just putting the tags on because on Twitch
right.
they weren't updating.
So yeah, and of course you might think, how the hell does a person escape when Berlin is literally surrounded by allies? We have Russians coming from the east.
Okay. We have a new follower. Thank you, SMG boy. I think that's Sam. Yeah, thank you. Continue.
My bad. He's the one who's seeing all the notifications going on. So do stop me if we get any more followers or anything. Thank you for following, by the way.
Silent Control said in chat that there were tons of tunnels under Berlin and highways always available for warplanes. So I think you should touch on that because that's part of one of the theories.
Oh yeah, I mean, You know about the highways and all the tunnels that have been built. I'm not saying they haven't, but it's been said that once the Allies were like, I don't know, I think it was 10 kilometers away from Berlin, they started to actually dig a wall. Oh, oh, okay, the fall line.
Wait,
Okay, that's what you're talking about, right?
wait.
Well, about that, I don't know how much it was possible to really escape on that route on the highways. A tunnel may be more possible because, like I said, I think the Allies, the Russians, were 10 kilometers or 10 miles away from Berlin, and there were rumors of starting to dig a tunnel towards the north so that they can actually escape. But I don't think that you can actually dig a tunnel in such a short period of time.
Well, I know we spoke about this privately, but you've told me about a theory that the Nazis actually dug a tunnel all the way to Finland because Finland was part of the Axis during the later stages of the war, and that obviously seems like a crazy idea, but I think we should talk about it.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a conspiracy. Like, again, I just want to mention we're not supporting, neither are we really denying these conspiracies. At least, the ones that are more down to earth. With this one, I'm a bit skeptical because digging so much. I mean, just imagine the manpower that is required. Which, I mean, let's not say they didn't have it. They did have it, but I think rather than having so many people trying to dig a tunnel, they would actually give them guns and send them on the
Of course.
battlefields rather than trying to, especially with their mindset and the end of the world with all the denial that was going on. If the soldiers were to actually want to dig a tunnel, they would just dig a tunnel for themselves and no one else, and just collapse what's behind them and just keep digging. But I think that one is a bit, a bit more, just too much, just too much. I digging like how many kilometers is Finland from Berlin?
I mean, from the UK to Berlin, it's about 1,000 and a bit. So
Come
I'd
on.
say it's about the same distance. 1,000 kilometers worth of tunnels. If you think about it, like the people who are famous for digging tunnels, like the El Chapo crew who dug tunnels on the Mexican border to do that kind of thing, they had such a monetary incentive to do it, and they still didn't manage to dig thousands of kilometers worth of tunnels. Even with all the might of the Third Reich behind him, I don't think Hitler could have ordered such a long tunnel, especially under sea, under so many obstacles between Germany and Finland at the time. Let's see what the people are saying in chat. There were tons of tunnels under Berlin. Yes, silent, of course. Highways are available, of course. Already said that. Russians started to drink vodka as soon as they realized they are victorious. Yeah, it gave us sufficient time to run away. I mean, on the day of the defeat of Berlin, Moscow actually ran out of vodka. This is quite a
Oh
funny
yeah, yeah.
story. They
You wrote about that, didn't you?
yeah, basically the after they announced that obviously Germany surrendered and Russia won the war, the people of Moscow all went out on the street, really happy. Raided every alcohol shop nearby. Alcohol was selling at train stations like hot bread. It was a scene to behold. I'm guessing. I wish I could have been there. Um, but it really shows the Russian spirit about the war. Even though they were celebrating even as they were making their way into Berlin and before the surrender. So that might have given Hitler enough time to dig something up, but I'm really not sure. The tunnel should arrive to Holland was still under their reign.
I guess if we were to talk about Holland, they would be a bit more realistic. But even so, I don't see it because I don't see Hitler wasting the manpower, which was really needed, especially when Berlin was surrounded, to actually use it to dig a tunnel. I think he would just send every man on the battlefield. At
I'm,
least that's my perspective.
I mean, he was sending children at some point near like the
Oh
end
yeah,
of the
yeah.
defense. So I think because Hitler was such a fanatic about his ideology, I don't know if he would have ended up sending his limited resources to save himself rather than save his country in
I
that
mean,
situation.
we can see in the last, I think it was 6 days, where they fought for Berlin, right in the center. I think we can see there that they had. I mean, most of the German soldiers were the SS officers that were left, because the other people that were fighting were pretty much German civilians. They weren't soldiers anymore, or German workers that were over there. There weren't much soldiers left. It was just SS officers, and I do emphasize this in the articles that I write, that I make a difference from the Wehrmacht soldiers and the SS officers, because they're two different types of people, and that's why I say this. I mean, you wouldn't have the SS officers fighting the same as the Wehrmacht soldiers, because the SS officers, obviously, they're more well trained. They some of them maybe have been on the battlefield, but most of them at that time they haven't. So, but they did do whatever they could. So getting back to the topic, I would say with this conspiracy of digging the tunnel, it's not what Hitler would have done, especially with his mindset, but more specifically is that some people, right? This is a different conspiracy. Some people think that Hitler died of Parkinson's disease about a month before before taking over Berlin, and not many people knew. It were only the heads that actually knew, because obviously, if this announcement came out right before the end of the war, that would devastate the troops, and they'd probably surrender then and there. But maybe that was his last wish. Even though so, I wouldn't say that's true, because if that were to be true, people would have surrendered. Because it was just him that was cynical and knew that maybe through some miracle they can still win the war with just 1,000 troops, whilst being surrounded by the Russians, who had millions, and the allies from the West.
Silent Control makes a good point, chat, actually. He thought the last of the child soldiers could protect the city, however, it didn't work out, so he could run away at the last time. Berlin airport resisted for a long time. That is true, but even if Hitler would have gotten on a plane, the air superiority the Allies had at the time, because the German air force was destroyed by the end of the war, I don't think he would have got that far away from Berlin until he would have been intercepted by one of the Allies, unless he maybe disguised his aircraft or used a captured aircraft from the Allies to try to blend in with a flight wing of other Allied planes that were patrolling. That might be a stretch, but it's not as much of a stretch as digging a tunnel all the way to Finland, I guess.
Uh, I would say that the conspiracy of him going to Spain and then from Spain going to Argentina, or at least South America. There's people say that it wasn't Argentina, it was some other different country. Some people say it was Brazil. We'll just leave it to South America, because having him keep on going to at least the north side of Europe, I would imagine that he was really hunted man. Even though if Holland was still at the time under the German regime. I don't know. At least that's what I think.
Someone in chat has also said that he was using drugs consists of different materials. He seemed like Alzheimer's because of that. I'm not sure. I think his closest doctor actually diagnosed him with some type of disease. I don't remember. It might have been Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. I think it was 100% that he had Parkinson's, and he was given really weird things to treat it. He was injected with a mixture, a concoction of really weird chemicals that I'm sure we can find a list of them somewhere, but it includes some really ridiculous medicines that even for a doctor that is treating one of the most powerful people in the world, it's really weird to do that. Wasn't he high for most of the war? I don't think high. He was on drugs for most of the war, but I don't know if he was high for most of the war. He did. I don't remember what the story exactly behind it was, but he gave. I don't remember if it was methamphetamine or speed to.
I think it was heroin, actually.
Was it heroin? He gave some drugs,
I
some kind of
think
drugs to the soldiers.
Heroin was pretty common as a medicine. I mean, a drug, class A drug that we consider it today. It was pretty common as medicine, especially in the German military. What I wanted to touch upon on that point is that I don't actually think, I'm not really good at medical stuff, but I don't actually think you can die from Parkinson's. I think it's a more of a degenerative disorder, I would say. But you can't actually die from it. Obviously, it will affect your health to the point where you will get other probably diseases or other health problems that might cause death. But the Parkinson's itself, the disease, I don't think it can actually kill you.
That's definitely
So,
something to look into. I'm not really sure myself. Obviously, we're more historians rather than medical professionals, but it causes you to be susceptible to other diseases, I do believe.
oh,
Um,
most likely, like all the drugs.
then yeah, that would make sense then because he was being prescribed a lot of things. I'm gonna see if well, actually, Andre, if you can try to find a list of all the drugs that he was prescribed. Because this is a bit of an extension to did Hitler escape Berlin? Because if Hitler wasn't alive in Berlin in 1945, there is no point arguing if he escaped or not, because obviously if he was dead, he can't escape. But there were findings that have said he was using a chemical soup like meth. I'm sure Andre can pull up a list of all the
So,
um,
what I found over here, we have heroin, we have cocaine, we have methamphetamine. So, apparently, he was prescribed all of them, but not at the same time. He tried different ones, but it didn't work for him. He suffered from various diseases and health problems by the time he reached 1945, near his death. But I do believe that I don't think that he died from a health problem. I would say that he just killed himself. He committed suicide, like it's like most conspiracies and most theories say and assume. Another thing that I wanted to touch upon is that if we were to talk about him escaping to South America, which again, I think everyone heard about this, at least everyone who's done some research on Hitler heard about this type of conspiracy. You know, they say that a lot, we have proof. I mean, it has been proven, and even CIA declassified some files, I think it was in 2016, where they have shown some picture, but it's not really a picture. It's some weird type of photography where apparently he was claimed to be alive in 1945, if I'm not mistaken, in Colombia at that time. So that's why they say that he might have also been seen in Colombia by a man named Philip Citroen. He was actually a CIA agent that was sent to actually see if Hitler was still alive. Well, it wasn't just Hitler. He went to actually see if how many people from the Third Reich, how many Nazis, more of a say, were still alive in South America. And I think many of you have heard that there have been cases reported where previous Nazis have been found living in South America, or at least records of them being alive previous to
I want to
this year.
if you're done with that point, I want to touch on something that Oscar said in chat. Thoughts on the body found in the Führer bunker, which the Russians claimed that it was Hitler, but in fact were female body parts. And also, was there enough gasoline to burn all the bodies? In terms of the Soviet claim that in fact they did find Hitler's body parts, I'm not sure because, as Simon says, we're not sure if the body was indeed burnt or if it was disposed of in another way. From what I've read about the topic, or there was an article on history.com from 2018 which talks about somebody finding Hitler's dentures. And we know they were Hitler's dentures because DNA tests confirmed that it was actually his dentures, that they were found somewhere in Berlin. And that kind of confirms that he was in Berlin in 1945 and as such wouldn't have escaped. So this only leaves us with him leaving his dentures behind and escaping to Argentina or wherever he escaped, which is, unless he ripped half of his mouth off, I'm not sure he could have done that. Or his body was burnt in Berlin and this was part of the remains. In terms of enough gasoline being available to burn all of the bodies, I'm sure that would have been a concern to them, but I'm sure they would have made it happen. Obviously, this was such an important for the people in the Führer bunker. They were Hitler's like upmost supporters. They were people who really believed in his ideology. They would have done everything possible to try to give their leader the most dignified death and make sure that they didn't capture. The enemy couldn't capture his bodies, especially an enemy which he hated so much, like the Soviets. So, as Oscar said, I'm like, in my opinion, I don't think the Soviets did end up finding Hitler's body, and like you said, it was indeed just random body parts of people that they may or may not have just found around Berlin, and they just put the body parts in the Fuhrer bunker, took a picture of it, and were like, "Oh, look, this is Hitler," and look, we captured him. To get a bit of extra prestige at the end of the war.
You were saying something that they found, because I spoke with you a few days before, and you said something that they found Hitler's teeth, I think it
Yeah,
was.
the dentures that were
Right,
what was I talking about before?
right.
So that kind of confirms that he couldn't have escaped well, at least couldn't have escaped in the way we're thinking of escaping. He escaped through death. And
Well, the
that
original idea of him escaping, let's say, at least a few days before the end of war, at least in Europe, I think it's impossible, because we're looking at, you have millions of soldiers surrounding Berlin, not even talking about Germany. I mean, you couldn't escape the city. Let's say you made it out of the city, and then what? Honestly,
I think there was, I don't remember if it was a German general or something along those lines, um, did try to disguise himself as a either like a German prisoner of war or something along those lines, but he
no,
got caught.
possible.
He did get caught really early into his escape plan, so I don't think that would have been viable either. Hitler had just a special dental treatment from the teeth. It could have been done to another similar guy. I mean, true. I'm not exactly sure on the details. I skimmed the article that I'm talking about, but even the DNA is always not 100% accurate. It could have been a double negative, or it could have been something that does pop up saying like, "Oh, this is Hitler's DNA," and at the end of the day, we can never really know, because the only way of knowing what happened to him would be to go back in time and witness for ourselves what happened in the bunker.
I'm just gonna one moment, because we have a comment on the Facebook stream saying the tunnel system was used or not. So, like I said, with all these conspiracies that we talked today, us historians were here to present the facts. We're not really here to agree or disagree. We're saying the possibilities from a historical point of view, but I think that the tunnels themselves, they're a bit far-fetched. So I would say, in my opinion, no. But there's no justification of it being real, being true or not.
We have a Oscar's actually posted the Wikipedia entry of this topic. So it says the myth that Hitler did not commit suicide but instead escaped with his wife was first presented to the public by Marshal Gregory Zhukov at the press conference on 9th of June 1945 on orders from the Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. When asked at the Potsdam conference in July 1945 how Hitler had died, Stalin said he was either living in Spain or in Argentina. So yeah, so as Silent also says that Stalin never accepted that Hitler was dead officially. So I think that
No. You know what I think that is? It's just having so much hatred, and
yeah, I was gonna
having so
say
much hatred that you just do not want to believe until you see your own, or actually knowing Stalin, until you kill him with your
yeah.
own hand.
I think because after fighting for so long against him, after 4 hard years of where Stalin broke down so much, I have a picture. I don't remember where I found it exactly. It was a picture of like Stalin, like with like he had his head in his hands and looking down after he heard the declaration of war, and that kind of like embodies his whole attitude that he experienced throughout the war, because he was at the beginning he completely disappeared after the declaration of war. He was so stressed that he just disappeared from the commanding post, and I don't remember if it was General Zhukov or another general had to take over until he came back, and he was like, oh, okay, let's do this. So the war impacted him so much that I think that he couldn't accept that after he worked so hard to beat him, it was finally over.
Yeah,
And as such,
yeah.
he made that statement. He was like, "Oh yeah, he's not dead. We're still trying to fight him," because he was still seeking to continue that fight within him.
Another, yeah. Well, it's just, I mean, if you were to look at how he treated not only his family, his soldiers, but everyone around him around during the war, especially leaving his son on the battlefield like nothing. I can tell you something about the person.
Do we want to switch to what happened to Stalin's son? Because I think we've been speaking about did Hitler escape Berlin
Sure.
for about 35 minutes. Yeah,
Be my
okay.
guess.
So I'll switch it. So what happened to Stalin's son? You brought it up, so I guess you can start.
So his main what was the name of his the actual son that he sent to the battlefield? I mean, he sent all of his sons to the battlefield,
Yeah,
but there
yeah.
was one that he just left hanging because he was caught. He was caught by German officers.
Yeah. You keep telling the story, and I'll find his name.
He was taken by German officers on I think it was 1943 on the Barbarossa offense, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Okay, I've got it up. So Yakov Duzug. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's his name.
Duzugashvili. Okay, sure. Go on. Continue.
I was just answering Oscar's comment. We're planning to go around 10 and another 2 hours, I presume. That would be. I can't say exactly 10 p.m. because everyone's watching from different countries, so they have different times. But yeah, we're probably going to continue for another 2 hours of stream. We have another comment from Silent Control saying Stalin was ready to protect the motherland from the beginning, as the peace treaty between SSCB and Germany was a good comedy.
What? I'm guessing that's Molotov-Ribbentrop.
Yeah.
Continue with the Yakov. I'll try to get a picture of him up while you talk about him.
There isn't much to say about him because he looked very much as his father. You know, he looked as for inspiration. Obviously, just like I presume every Russian, he wanted to fight for his motherland, especially being indoctrinated by Stalin as his father. You know, so he would do anything. He would die for his father. He would die for his country, for the motherland. So, you know, and seeing, I think it was that turning point when he was captured, and I don't remember exactly the story, but I know Stalin did get word that his son was captured, and he didn't care about it.
Yeah.
He actually said that it is his own fault for being captured, his own fault for not being I'm not going to say necessarily a good soldier enough to actually let himself captured, but actually doing something or dying, you know, honorably on the battlefield, not getting captured.
Yeah. The thing is, they didn't have the best relationship, but Stalin. Oh, whatever. Like, I'm trying to get the picture of Stalin's son up, but it's giving me a bit of trouble. Yeah. The relationship between the two wasn't the best because as from the beginning, like before the war, there was a lot of trouble within the.
Actually, I think I'm mistaken. I think he was captured in 1941 and then sent to a detention camp, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's
he. Here it says that he died in 1943, so I'm guessing that he did get captured in 1941. I'm going to get a transition scene going to get a picture of him up, but you continue. There was talk about his other son, because he had another son who tried to kill himself, if I remember rightly.
His other son, he was very different because he thought that the dictatorship that was presented by his father wasn't right, and I think he didn't really believe in communism, if I'm not mistaken. He had, in a way, he liked the idea, but he was more of a socialist rather than a communist, if I were to say.
Yeah. So and then at one point he tried to commit suicide, if I remember rightly, and he failed. I think he tried to shoot himself and he failed. And as Oscar mentioned, because that's what got me on the train of thought, he said that the idiot couldn't even shoot straight at the when he was told that his son tried to commit suicide. I'll get a picture up of one of the sons now. This is the son who was captured, then died in Sachsenhausen. Oh god, this is a long word. Sachsenhausen concentration camp in 1943 at the age of 36. I'll call back to us. he I mean, looks like Stalin. Yeah, he looked quite similar to Stalin actually. It really shows that that it was his son.
Mm.
Stalin wasn't popular among the society tough, however, he managed the situation well. Yeah, I mean, it can be, we can argue about if Stalin was good or bad before or after the war, but during the war, I don't know that many other people could stand in Stalin's shoes and lead a country as big and as complex as the Soviet Union was at the time.
Having control over such a big country, it's not easy, and you gotta show a bit, a bit of, I'm not gonna say violence nor brutality, which definitely was with all the gulags, but you have to, push the people around a bit to show that they can't rebel against you, especially in a communistic country. We have another comment on, because that's why I wanted to stop you. We have another comment on
Wait,
Facebook.
yeah, we have a comment on Twitch as well. I'll go through it quickly. Oscar's going, so we'll see you later. Thank you for your contribution. And Silent Control said Stalin was a follower of Lenin's ideals about socialism, and we can get on to that after you talk about or however he had to protect the country second time. Yeah. Go on to the Facebook comment and then we can address both.
So we have a Facebook comment that says that actually Stalin's son, and I think he's referring to Yakov in this case, was captured by Germany, and then the Stalin was asked for a big reward in exchange for his son.
He was asked for a German general, I think, or a really high-ranking German prisoner, if I remember correctly.
Oh, I see. So
Yeah.
it was pretty much they tried to swap, but as you can see, Stalin wouldn't give anything for his son. He didn't really care about Yakov. But then again, just like Calin mentioned, they didn't have the best of relationship. And he, like I said, he wasn't really keen to family. He cared more about the motherland than his family. I think he would have done anything for his motherland, especially during the war, and with emphasizing the point with the hatred that he had for Hitler at the time.
I think when he was asked about switching between, because obviously Hitler thought that due to he caught Stalin's son, this is like the biggest bounty you could get in the war. He thought that he could get as much out of Stalin as possible, and he asked for possibly the highest tier of prisoner that Stalin had at the time. And Stalin just blatantly declined because he said that obviously the German general would have been of much more use to the Germans than Stalin's son would have been to the Soviet Union. But yeah, it's I think, do you want to end the Stalin son topic there and move on to something else? Do we have anything else?
I have two more comments on Facebook.
Oh, okay.
So we have one that says, "No, Hitler is dead as Julius Caesar." He is, because otherwise, if he wasn't, he would be, I think, 116 years old or something like that.
He would have been one of the oldest people alive. So yeah, he is definitely dead now.
And after taking so many drugs, I don't think he would make it that far. And then we have another comment saying Stalin actually was from Georgia and not from Russia. Yeah, that is true.
But his there was actually a problem with Georgia due to this, because after the war, as Stalin, or people were criticizing Stalin for being lenient towards Georgia and treating Georgia more leniently than any of the other members of the Union. So there was actually around between 1949 and 53. I don't remember the year exactly. There was a big purge of like high level Soviet officials in the country to show the people and the leadership of the Soviet Union that Stalin treated everyone equally badly. He had no preferences, even his own people, obviously.
So what he would do, because it's kind of funny, he would actually tell someone to go and kill that certain person, and then he would have another person kill the killer of whoever killed that certain person. Then he would have another killer kill whoever killed that certain person, and then he would kill the killer.
It's a really long. The way I don't know. He
I've written an article about this, about 3 officials that he first tried to he tried to trial them by sending them to gulags or detention camps. I don't remember which one it was, or forced labor camps. Anyways, but he didn't manage, and then they one by one, month by month, they just disappeared.
Yeah. Obviously, Stalin's rule over the Soviet Union was quite brutal, and we can move on to that topic if you want, because I think we've milked the Stalin's son topic quite dry.
So I think with having discussed both sides, I would say that it's a good time to discuss, especially with the comments and the comment that was on Facebook. How would they have how would they have trialed Hitler if they would have caught him alive? That's my question.
Okay.
What do you think?
Let me put the timestamp
And also-
down, and
Also, please, chat, do give some inputs
Yeah.
on both platforms,
so
because this isn't really discussed that much.
I think obviously we have to look at some of the other high-profile cases. So I think I'll bring up the Wikipedia page for the what was it called again? The trials? My mind's gone blank. The trials where they trialed the Nazis, the Nuremberg trials.
Yes, Nuremberg trials.
So I think the highest the highest ranked person that they did manage to get in the end was, I think, the leader of the Luftwaffe. I'll see if I can bring it up. So we have I'm a sort by deaths. So anti-Semitic newspaper, instrumental to the Auschluss.
I think it was Hermann Göring as well. If you say mention the leader.
Yeah,
of the,
Hermann
the
Göring.
Luftwaffe.
Yeah, so
He was the leader of the Luftwaffe.
Yeah. So it was Hermann Göring. You're right. So obviously Hermann Göring was so he was the way that the trial, he had 4 categories. So he was tried for participating in a common plan or conspiracy to accomplish crimes against humanity, planning and planning, initiating and waging wars of aggression and other crimes against peace, participating in war crimes and crimes against humanity. He was tried for all 4. So I think obviously Hitler was a much higher level above this, and Hermann Göring received like full strike. So with Hitler being there, one, I think first, if Stalin would have caught him first, he would have been paraded around the Soviet Union in a quite similar style that captured kings back in the day would be.
Most definitely.
Yeah, the images that come to my head is like a king in a cage being like paraded around the capital, like the main street of the capital. I think something similar would have happened with Hitler, considering the amount of pain, the 25 million plus Soviet citizens that resulted in that died because of his actions. He would have been paraded around the Soviet Union, and if he didn't die during that process, because you can only imagine the amount of angry people lining the streets to see him and the throwing things at him, the lunging for him. If he wouldn't have died then, and then he was handed over either to the Allies or if he faced trial in the Soviet Union, he would 100% just be tried to death. I don't know if that death would have been different, because obviously death by hanging is a really mild way to go for somebody of his grandeur, considering the amount of things he has done. But obviously, because the Allies had to keep an air of like, we are above this. The Axis did such and such bad things. We have to be better than this. We can't sink to their level. So I think even though many would have wanted to see Hitler like chopped up into little pieces and like chucked in a fire, I think that the Allies would have just given him the same treatment to show that at the end of the day, even if you are the leader of such a thing, and even if you've committed everything, you've committed such outrageous crimes, you'll still end up in the same thing. You'll still end up dead.
I think, in my opinion, first of all, it would have been a good excuse to start Cold War a lot quicker. Because
Yeah.
I would imagine it that you would have the Soviets and the Western Allies just fight over him. It would just be the British, the Americans, and the Russians fighting over, and just each one pulling from a limb.
Yeah.
And I would think that obviously Stalin would pretty much want to see him tortured to death, maybe, I don't know, because being closed and just rotting in a cell for the rest of your life. When you have so much hatred, I think that the only way I see it, Stalin would have taken that hatred as just to torture him himself, or at least kill him himself, because a man like that, taking so many lives, he wouldn't really deserve a life, not even in a rotting in a cell,
I mean,
from my point of view.
during his stay at what's the place called again? Where he spent after the putsch, the Bihar putsch, he spent a couple of years in imprisonment. He furthered himself, even though he was although he did end up in quite good conditions. He took that time to further his ideology in his brain. Also, I'm gonna change the current topic because that's outdated. But so
Come on, Calin, keep up.
what would
We have another comment on on Facebook saying, but the question is, how would you like, I presume, to be Hitler's solicitor? I do not think anyone would like to be Hitler's solicitor, even though at the time, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think there was a law saying that you have the right to a solicitor. As far as I'm aware, I'm not sure on that one.
From what I remember, everyone, all of the Nazis.
I think all of the Nazis at the Nuremberg trial did have a solicitor.
Yeah,
So I do. Yeah.
So
I was remembering that as well.
I'm sure there was a law where you did have the you did have a right to one. I obviously again on the same line of thinking that I was saying before. I think Hitler would have received one, but to counter that, actually, after obviously once he was trialed, he when he was trialed after the Bihar putsch, he used the whole trial as a big platform to tell the world, or not the world, to tell Germany that, look, my ideology is the best, and this whole trial is not, like, it is unfair, and you should follow me, which worked in Germany at the time because he was.
It's not only that reason, but it's also because we gotta face it. The Soviet Union did face most casualties and the biggest devastation from the Second World War.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that there would have been. There's two sides to this. If you want to take it, I think if the Allies caught him, he would have faced a trial and just been executed like the other members, like the but Oscar.
Curtain has descended across the continent.
GP, thank you for the follow. So Oscar is saying that the Polish obviously did also face many casualties, which is true, but I don't have the statistics. I did actually have the statistics. I'll get this up right now. Casualties of World War II. I'm pretty sure the Soviet Union is obviously first. Poland is a close third, which is still quite impressive considering they had such a small population and many Poles died in the concentration camps. And obviously, if I'm guessing that the retribution from the Polish people, if they did catch Hitler, would have been to a similar level that if the Soviet Union would have caught Hitler.
True.
Do we have anything else in chat to continue on this topic? Oh, we have something from Stalin Control. I think we should look back to World War One. Germany accepted the most difficult conditions. People couldn't find even potatoes.
That's very true. Good point made.
Okay, so we can move on to Treaty of Versailles. If you want to start it off.
Yeah, sure. So on that basis, I would say that well, it's again, it's two-sided. This is really two-sided because if you look at the Treaty of Versailles and you look after they have been defeated in World War One, they have followed through, I would say, each and every requirement that they have been asked in the treaty. Especially given I think they paid everything, haven't they? If I'm not mistaken.
They
or at least most of the time that
they continued the payments. Or West Germany continued the Versailles payments after the war.
Right.
So
they have been fair, especially with all the rules that they have been given. As in, having a regulation on the size of the military that they can have, and I think that was only for like 10 years, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that, because obviously it would have been removed by at least 1935, I would imagine.
Well, no, because Hitler broke the treaty to remilitarize. So I think it was the Treaty of Versailles stated that Germany could only have 100,000 people in the army, and I think that was for an indefinite amount until the Allies decided to allow them to remilitarize, which was no planes, no tanks. It limited some ships, which they were allowed to remilitarize some of the navy at some point in the 30s, if I remember correctly. Hitler was discriminated and made everyone regret about it. True. He did face some hardships, you could say, at the beginning of his life, but I don't think they reflect the hardships that the rest of Europe faced. Yes, they were allowed a defensive force. I think the Oscar is referring to the 100,000 people. And some of the other, just in general, the Treaty of Versailles, if we think about the context of World War One and the real like background of it, I don't think Germany was treated really unfairly for a nation that didn't technically start the conflict, considering Austria, Hungary, and Serbia started the conflict. They received some very bad terms, although they did play a big part in the conflict, of course, that can't be denied. For a secondary partner, I have to put that in air quotes because obviously they probably provided most of the manpower throughout the war. For a secondary partner in the war, in terms of treaties, they did receive a really hard bargain for what they did put out in the war. They did, of course, on the Western Front. I said it right. So on the Western Front, they did end up killing a lot of British, French people in the trenches. The same did happen to a lot of French and British people did kill a lot of Germans, and they faced no backlash.
You see, just like the point you made, the First World War, the Great War, let's say, was very different. The type of warfare was very different, where the civilians weren't really, obviously there were casualties, and the civilians were a big part of those casualties, but they weren't really targeted as much as in World War II. I would say that the soldiers weren't as ruthless on the civilians.
It's not that the soldiers, I think, because.
But then again, it was the warfare was different because it was more trench warfare rather than urban or rural warfare. So they had their sides. It wasn't that every city or every village had to be raided, every village had to be gone through. In most cases, yes, but they did miss some.
Yeah, I think
there was some because I've read and some historians say that there were some safe havens, they like to call it, where you can. Obviously, you didn't have a lot of people, but some people actually did migrate to some of those safe havens around Europe to, where there was no military interest because there was no strategic importance to the place. There wasn't any resources that were valuable near the place. So,
I think what you're thinking of is that World War One was more conventional warfare, and World War Two was total warfare.
Exactly.
Where the entire population of a country was involved in the war, not just the front line. Hitler invaded France. Why is the reason? Goes back to World War One. People's rage. I mean, the reputation between Germany and France goes back to like the beginning of European history. Since the obviously one point is resources, as Oscar says, but the conflict between France and Germany has always been France and Germany have been the titans of Europe for a long time.
Sorry to interrupt. I think what Stalin Control is referring to here might have been the rage that he had with the French soldiers.
Yeah, of course.
Whilst he was a soldier during World War One. That's what you can confirm if that's what you're referring to. I would believe that would make more sense.
Yeah. Obviously that is part of the reasons why, because France facilitated the Treaty of Versailles, and they pushed for even harder.
That as well, yeah.
They pushed for even harder. What's the word I'm thinking of here? Harder terms to be poor against Germany, like to be so that they pay more reparations, that they have no army at all, not even a defensive force. So obviously a big part of that, because Germany, no, Hitler saw France as and the people who collaborated, the German people who collaborated with France in the peace deal, he saw the German people as traitors. Then he saw France as like the ultimate evil, because of France, he ended up in the position that he was, where his country was in shambles. There was no jobs. People were starving out on the streets. So I think above the level where he saw the Jewish people as scapegoats, and he saw that the people of France as maybe like a secondary, like, scapegoat in his head, and maybe he had the same amount of rage that he had, not the same amount, a similar level of rage towards the French as he had.
Yeah, but you see,
towards
you can't really compare them, because he was hating on the Jewish people for a reason, and he was hating on the French for a different reason. Yes, some of them do find a similarity between them, but in most cases, you know, it's a different kind of rage. It's a different kind of reason why to hate someone, or different a nation or race, as you would call it. Because with the Jewish people, it was like they were wealthy in this country, right? So it wasn't, in his eyes, it wasn't right that the Jewish people, even though most of them were Germans, that they were wealthy, and most of the German people, was after World War II, weren't wealthy, especially the ones that have fought the war. And in this case, you know, and I mean, we're going a bit off topic here, but there's a lot of reasons for that rage. I just wanted to make a difference between the rage provoked by the French and the rage provoked by the Jewish people.
Yeah. Do we have anything else to talk about this? I think we've run through most of it. The treaty obviously was unfair towards Germany, as I think that's not a very controversial opinion, considering the amount of damage that was done to both sides. So the treaty was obviously unfair for Germany. That created rage within not only Hitler, just the German people in general, because they saw it as unfair, because it wasn't really their war that they were fighting, and they ended up receiving the worst treatment in the end, and that obviously catapulted the nationalism, which allowed Hitler to rise up.
Pretty much.
I mean, yeah, we could continue on the World War II topic, or if you have anything else lined up, we can always have a look at that while I note down the timestamps of everything.
Well, I would say we can go back to Hitler's trial and discuss it more on how would people have seen it, not just necessarily, you know, talking about the leaders of big powers, Stalin or Churchill or Roosevelt, talking about the people themselves, the civilians that actually lost people, lost their families, lost their loved ones, and especially their houses, and lost pretty much everything that in their country. So those people that had to work hard to rebuild, those people probably, most of them, I would imagine, wanted him when we closed down, or I would say the harshest, it would be just burned alive, like he did with most Jewish people.
Well, as Stalin mentions here, Jewish people have always been treated at the beginning of the history. Since they become rich, they misunderstood. Jewish people obviously faced the biggest impacts during the conflict, because they were not only in German-controlled territory, or just Axis territory, even before the war in Russia, where there was anti-Semitic policies that enabled Stalin to kick Jewish people out, or even after the war, Stalin facilitated the move of Jewish people to either Israel, after the state was created, and to a Jewish-only autonomous oblast in the far east of the country, to kind of like, I'm not sure what ideals he had in mind, but obviously it shows that although the civilians suffered on both sides, we have to look at both sides in terms of how they treated everyone, because we can say obviously Germany was anti-Semitic, but the whole continent was anti-Semitic at the time, and that's one of the reasons why the massacre was allowed up until the point where it was discovered. Because a lot of countries, as the Holocaust started...
When you say allowed, what do you refer to?
Well, by that I mean, as a Kristallnacht, if we take Kristallnacht as the start of the Holocaust, Kristallnacht being the
Right.
not the Night of the Broken glass, where Jewish shops were destroyed by German militias and people in general. Many German Jews wanted to escape Germany because they saw that they were being discriminated against in schools, they were being discriminated against in jobs, in state positions, in things like this, and they wanted to escape the country. And for that, they sold everything, and then they looked to other countries for help, and many countries such as Britain, France, Switzerland, and other countries which were at the end of the war part of the Allies refused them entry because I can't really say because I'm not really sure myself. Obviously there was there were other factors that resulted in them saying no, but we can't just place the entire blame of like at the beginning of the conflict. We have to look at the Allies facilitating this hatred for the Jews, as they didn't help. It is quite similar to what's happening today, actually, with the refugee situation, but that's another topic. But in terms of other countries, places like Britain accepted the Jewish children like in 1939, just before the outbreak of the war. But before that, the UK, France, and the United States did nothing to help the Jewish people, which everyone in Europe saw that they were being treated very badly through Kristallnacht, like I said, through them being rounded up in ghettos in Berlin and places like that, and then after that being rounded up in ghettos in Krakow and all the other German occupied territories, and other countries looked and just stood by the sidelines. Do you want to continue on that topic, or I mean, let's see what everyone else says. Kind of an easy scapegoats. They were easy targets. Yeah, true. Switzerland remains independent. Yeah, Switzerland did do a lot.
I would say that Switzerland kind of played along with Germany.
Yeah, but people in Switzerland try to help. I don't remember did you write about
they tried
the diplomat? There was a Peruvian diplomat that saved. It was a South American diplomat that saved around 20,000 Jews. So he was a diplomat to Switzerland, and he was giving out visas to German Jews so that they could vacate and go back to Switzerland. So people in Switzerland tried to play a role.
He wasn't Peruvian. He was Japanese.
No. That's the guy in Vilnius. That's something else.
Oh right.
There was another guy. There was a guy in Switzerland.
So many of them.
Yeah, I know. There was another guy in there was a South American diplomat in Switzerland who did do that and released passports and visas, and he obviously saved a lot of people. But that is an individual effort. That wasn't a whole country. The whole country still stood by the sideline and provided weapons to Germany and the Allies near the end of the war, but still provided a lot more weapons to the Axis than they provided to the Allies. Although Switzerland does claim to be it claims to be neutral.
They do claim to be neutral, but they did help Germany quite a bit.
They obviously had to play along being surrounded by just Axis territory until D-Day and the other invasions.
I mean, it's pretty much just like Sweden was, because Hitler was prepared to invade Sweden overnight, because obviously the Swedish army wasn't all that. I mean, with the Blitzkrieg tactic, it would just been maybe, I don't know, a week, and they would have taken the whole country. But it was Hermann who didn't want Hitler to actually invade Switzerland, because he had friends there. Friends that actually did end up helping the German military in the campaign.
We can argue about the role of Switzerland in the war. It's obvious that it was used as the financial institution for the whole globe. That includes Axis, allies, neutral countries. It contributed in ways that aren't really looked at, and that is a topic that we should definitely discuss at some point. I don't think both of us have enough knowledge about Swiss banking at this point and its history to really delve into it properly.
Yeah.
Also, we kind of deviated from Treaty of Versailles to
We
the
have.
Jews, and I need to note that down.
Like we said at the beginning of the stream, do bear with us. This is the first time we're doing this, and we're trying to. This is why we kind of created this stream, because it wasn't just us presenting facts or discussing different topics. We want to interact with you, with our readers, and all the people that actually follow the publication.
I mean, we could. Do you? You don't have an up-to-date, in-depth knowledge of the Swiss banking? No, unfortunately, I haven't really studied 1939 to 1946 Swiss banking. I mean, it's definitely it's definitely something that we should look into soon, considering we do write about history. But I mean, if we want to continue on the topic of World War II and Jews, we can talk about the different Schindlers that have appeared on our publication. Considering I can name at least 3 people that we've named ex-country Schindler, so like Romanian Schindler, Japanese Schindler, Peruvian Schindler, or whoever the South American guy was. I don't remember if you spoke about one of them.
I spoke about the Japanese Schindler, and if we were to dwell into this, I want to tell people that we called them Schindlers because obviously Oskar Schindler, the famous Oskar Schindler, who actually saved almost 2,000 Jews, by using his power as a diplomat in Germany, and knowing a lot of powerful people and a lot of powerful Nazis.
Well, no, Schindler wasn't a diplomat. He was a factory owner.
Factory owner, businessman. Let's call him.
Yeah.
Best appropriate saying of wording. There are other people from other countries that have done pretty much the same thing. I've written about a Japanese Schindler known who actually saved almost 20,000 people by making them visas and sending them overseas. Work visas to send them overseas. Obviously, the Japanese, because they were allied, they were part of the Axis and they were allied with the Germans. They wouldn't want to do that, obviously, especially knowing that, Germany pretty much don't like Jews and they want to deal with their own thing. Especially Japan didn't really have much business, especially at that time in 1943. They didn't really have that much business in Europe. They were dealing with their own problems in the Pacific. So what Japanese Schindler done is he actually said no to the government and he made the visas behind their back, because he had the power to make the visas, but obviously in Japanese tradition, going against your own country and going against your own government, it was pretty much the biggest crime you could commit, at least at the time.
Didn't the Japanese government say that he could issue refugee visas or some kind of visas as long as the Jewish people were out of Japan by 30 days, so they could only stay in Japan for like, I don't remember exactly the day, I think it was 15 to 30 days, and then if they left by then, it would have been fine, otherwise they would have been kicked out and sent back.
I think that was the story behind it, yes.
I mean, we've already spoken about the Peruvian one, well, I don't remember exactly who was, the South American one, but we also had the story about an Indonesian Schindler. Yeah, so Oskar Schindler was the industrialist that saved the 1,200 Jews. There was a Indonesian Schindler who also saved around 20,000 people by giving them work visas, by working because not Indonesian, sorry, Filipino, because the Philippines was under US occupation at the time, and he faced a lot of backlash from the United States government, because the United States government, obviously, if they didn't give visas to the Jewish people at the time themselves, they didn't want their puppets to do that either. But I don't remember the name. I think it was the leader, prime minister, or something along those lines. A really high figure in the Filipino parliament issued a lot of work visas with the pretext that he wanted to develop the farming like sector of the southern part of the country, and he managed to issue, I don't remember if it was 20,000 or 2,000. It was a quite large amount of work visas.
Also, I think you've written about quite recently about a mayor in Romania who has done pretty much the same thing, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Because you were thinking about the Romanian Schindler.
Yeah. So the Romanian Schindler. Let me see the chat before I move on to that first. So World War II made Swiss banking the winners of the time lapse. Yep, true. I wonder if the Swiss banking was being used to launder the legal richness. Yeah.
Most likely.
We know that a lot of Nazi gold did pass through Switzerland, and I'm I'm guessing that some of it is still there, but Switzerland was used as the European bank.
That might give a good
Right.
explanation also to. Sorry.
We had a donation from Oscar. He has sent us $1.34. I'm guessing that's £1. Thank you, Oscar. That Oscar #1 history of yesterday.
Thank you very much. Also, what I wanted to say is probably a big part of the missing treasure of the Nazis is in Switzerland. Actually, the national treasure I'm referring to.
Yeah. Well, it was 5 zloty, according to him. Some of the Jewish profs run away to the Turkish Republic. They helped start a better education system. True, there was a lot of scientists that moved on. We can talk about that after. Do you want me to talk about the Romanian Hitler and then move on to?
Yes, please.
To
Romanian
scientists?
Schindler, not Hitler.
The Romanian, yeah. Sorry, there's a big difference.
I know we were part of the Axis for a while, but we came on the good side at the end.
So there was a Romanian mayor at some point during the Romanian when the Romania was part of the Axis during the Second World War, who he was a lawyer who worked in the Bessarabia region, now known as the Republic of Moldova, until its annexation by the Soviet Union. Then moved on to work as a lawyer in the capital Bucharest, and the Nazi leader at the time, Antonescu, asked him to become a mayor of a town in the Bukovina region, which is a region up in the northeast of Romania, which had a quite sizable Jewish population. And he at the time of the offer, he considered not accepting it because it and what Antonescu stood for was completely different from what the lawyer stood for. The lawyer was completely anti-Nazi. He was he believed in democracy and things that at the time Antonescu didn't provide to the Romanian people. But some friends suggested to him that he could do more good than bad by being in this position, and he ended up accepting it. So he ended up becoming the mayor of this town, which had a population of about 40,000 Jews, if I remember correctly. It was over 20,000 because at some point he was ordered to create a ghetto for these Jewish people, which he denied outright. Something which was very very risky, considering that there was a history of leaders going missing that didn't agree with the leadership of the country. But he was left alone to his own devices, and then at some point the regional leader of Bukovina asked the lawyer now mayor to send all of the Jews from the town away to the not the gulags, the work camps that Germany set up. And obviously, as he was completely with the Jewish people of his town, he was given a list of 200 people that could stay, that were relevant to the industries that they were working in. But after arguing with Antonescu, Antonescu ended up extending the list to 20,000 people. Or 2,000 again. 20,000 and 2,000. It's a very common number for this topic. So unfortunately, I don't remember. But the short list was expanded greatly from the initial number, because he argued with Antonescu that the Jewish people were vital to the industry of the town at the time, and those people ended up surviving the war even after the Soviet occupation, even after the communist years. Most of the children, because obviously some of the people who were alive there at the time working were old enough to die in the late 20th century. But some of the people alive then and some of their children still live in Romania and in the region to this day.
Sorry.
We can go down two ways. After I note down the time for this, we have Chippy has asked Antonescu hero criminal, or we could go with Jewish professionals running away. Up to you.
Let's go with the Jewish professional, and then we'll follow up, because I see that the first request is
Yeah,
Jewish professionals.
So, do you want to start with that? Will I note everything down?
Well, let's talk about a really well-known Jewish professional
Oh.
that many people don't know he's Jewish professional. I
Uh,
mean, what do you refer to as Jewish professional? I presume someone from
well,
academia,
Yeah,
right?
well, obviously scientists, things like this. So,
Now, who was
uh,
a well-known German,
well,
Jewish professional living in Germany at the time?
well, I mean, obviously Einstein was a big, what was probably the biggest out of all of these.
So I
Who
think,
else?
I mean, he also had the biggest impact. So if we were to talk about Jewish professional, many of his friends from academia, which he went to school as well, people that are really bright, and obviously that's why he was hanging out with them. Saw, like he said, when the Holocaust, the first signs of the Holocaust started, they did see that they weren't welcome, no matter how bright they were, what kind of contribution could they bring to Germany, to the German military, or to the society. Even though, despite saying that, the Germans, especially Hitler, was hungry for Einstein. Why? Because he knew that he had the potential to create powerful weapons, such as the nuclear weapon.
I don't know. Well, obviously,
that was reason.
Einstein did contribute to the project, to the nuclear project, but I think
No. So
Oppenheimer was.
yes. So yeah, no, I mean my bad. But
Yeah.
I do kind of like to say, because you create the basics of something, like you create the wheel, and then obviously someone created the bicycle, the car, and the
Yeah.
whatever. Because he created, I think it was nuclear fusion that he invented,
Well, he didn't invent. He discovered it.
discovered
say,
it.
yeah.
Yes. My bad bad terminology over here. And I think at the time when he was first sent a letter from Hitler saying that we need you, we need your expertise for this and that. He was over in Britain at I think it was Cambridge. He was at the time, and then he came back to Germany, and then he migrated to Holland when he saw that the Germans were after him, and then from Holland he went straight to I think he went back to Britain, and then he went straight to America because he was called by a university. I think it was Preston. Or where did he go?
I'm not sure. I'm trying to look for the membership of the Manhattan Project right now. To see exactly.
Oh, look, Oscar. Yeah. No, you're right, Oscar. Yeah, he hypothesized about it.
What, he sent letter to the US president? No, wrong story. Oh,
I think it's a big influence. I want to say that he was a big influence because obviously, if a lot of professionals saw that he's going away, they also went away. But then I think quite a few of them did stay, and quite a few of them were forced to actually work for the German military.
I'm not sure about working for the German military. I think all Jewish professionals either were killed or just left Germany, because even in the Nazi fanaticism, even if it would have greatly benefited them to keep hold of some of these scientists, I don't think that they could bring themselves to pushing their ideology away in terms of for progress.
True. But then again, you see the point of Hitler, or let's just say German Nazis, wanting Einstein because they knew that he had a very bright mind and he had the potential to create devastating weapons, the type of weapons that Hitler wanted and needed. So I think that point kind of states that he would have used them rather than waste them. Even though he hated Jewish people that much, he did see some potential in certain people. But then again, this wasn't, it was just him dictating certain things, but at the end of the day, some of the German generals and the people that were higher up in the Nazi party made those decisions of who lives, who dies, and who we get to use, either for the benefit of the German people or the benefit for personal benefits for themselves.
There's a long list of German Jewish scientists who were kicked out. As mentioned in chat, some Sonic Control said von Braun.
He did
helped
help.
America create the bomb V2 missiles. Very important. A lot of, even after the war, even those who weren't Jewish, the German scientists who worked during the war in Germany ended up going to either, in the paperclip program, or I think it's the American name for it, were taken by the Americans to the US so that they could get a scientific advantage over the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union did a similar thing with German scientists where they grabbed as many as they could in a frenzy to try to get an advantage over the other side. As although the Cold War didn't officially start by the end of World War II, there was already cracks within the alliance between the two sides due to the ideological differences.
And also the hunger to actually gain of as much German land as possible.
Oscar says,
I think before you say that, Silent Control says that if Hitler could finish the atomic bomb, he could have be victorious. I would say no, because even if he was able to finish the atomic bomb, he wouldn't have the resources to have a lot more. And based on the size of the Soviet forces at the time, an atomic bomb wouldn't have been enough.
Yeah.
We're talking about millions of soldiers here, spread on many, many miles.
Even if Moscow fell from a nuclear bomb,
that wouldn't stop the Soviet Union.
The Red Army would have just continued. Let me see what Oscar said. So, the following year, when the war started, many scientists fled from Germany, fearing persecution. Among these were Leo Szilard, I hope that would pronounce that right, Eugene Wigner, who would make their mission to inform the US about the dangers of nuclear weapons and the possibility of Germany first making one. So they created what is now known as the Einstein-Szilard letter, which was signed by Albert Einstein and eventually passed on to Franklin D. Roosevelt, informing him of the danger of atomic weapons. And then Silent says, Einstein was as vital as a general. Hitler was trying to build factories in the mountains. No, I would say, for the atomic bomb. Yeah, I know that the Nazis were looking to gain access to the technology to build a nuclear bomb, but I don't know how close they were to it. I would guess that they would have put as much as they could into the project to build it. England was sabotaging the Nazi nuclear programs. Yeah, I'm guessing that they both sabotaged and gained information from it and then passed it on to the US, because obviously the US was leading this effort to. From my understanding. I remember this. Germany was buying heavy water from the Nordic countries, which is vital to nuclear research, and the Allies kept sinking. Specifically, the United Kingdom kept sinking shipments from the Nordic countries of heavy water. Continue with what you were saying.
Oh, I was just going to mention that I don't initially think that they played the Nazi the information that the British took from the Nazi nuclear project didn't play such a big role in the Americans actually creating the nuclear bomb. Because I think Einstein with his discovery, as well as who do we say that created the nuclear bomb?
Well, Oppenheimer.
I think
he was the head of the Manhattan project, if I'm right.
I think they had knowledge and they already knew what they were doing, so I don't think that's they really needed that information.
While I do this, you can introduce the topic of Antonescu, because I think you know more about it than I do.
Yeah, well, I'm more focused on the Axis, and you're more focused on the Allies.
Yeah.
So we got a comment. We had a comment about Antonescu, if he is seen as a hero or not. And I would say that you see, Antonescu was friends with Hitler for a long time, even before the war, so they knew each other. And Marshal Ion Antonescu, who did control Romania from the beginning of the war until 1944, where King Mihai I took over. He didn't agree with the ideology of the Holocaust, but he found out only in 1944, at the beginning of 1944, about the Holocaust. And he did say in the official trial that he was given before he was executed. This was around, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, the end summer of 1944, where he was executed with a few of his friends who supported his ideologies. He supported, a fascist Romania per se. But Antonescu was never really focused and never really liked the idea of the Holocaust, and he thought it's a really terrible thing to do, and he didn't know until then the sort of man Hitler was, because he saw Hitler with a very different perspective. He saw him, knowing him from World War One, as a very different person. But the thing is that it wasn't just that, but when he said also in the trial, I remember because I did see the trial live. There's a recording, an old recording, which is really bad quality, but I did listen to it a few times so I can get the actual message. He did say that Hitler spoke about the Great War. I mean, World War II being the world of wars, total destruction, and having Germany end up controlling everything. That's the point where Antonescu was kind of frightened. That's the point where Antonescu, he realized what Nazi Germany was doing and why they were fighting this war. Romania played a really vital part for the in the Axis and for the Nazi Germany, mainly because of the natural resources they were offering, which was the petrol that they were taking. I mean, sorry, the gas, because I know most of all the German tanks ran on diesel. So let's just say the diesel. I think it was 25, because I did some research on this. I did answer a question on Quora, which I was asked about. I think it was 25, the total production which Germany was taking, every last drop of gas produced by Romania. I think it was 25 million liters per month that Romania was producing, and that's even with what Germany was producing, even with the production line from Bessarabia and from Odessa, that still wasn't enough. At least it wasn't enough for the whole for the Blitzkrieg to continue for the whole Soviet Union. So I would say that by near the end of Romania being still part of the Axis and Marshal Ion Antonescu still being still being the leader of Romania, he did fight for his country, but at the same time, he didn't. He cared more about winning the war rather than his country. So he didn't care the cost that Romania had to pay, the amount of lives that they had to send to the battlefield, the poverty, the hunger that was going on in the country at the time, because most of the people were working in agriculture, and most of the agriculture was going towards the battlefield for Romanian, Hungarian, and German forces. So people barely had anything to eat themselves.
Yeah, I don't know much about this topic. This is more up to you.
In my opinion, I don't really see him as a hero. No, he wasn't really a hero, I would say.
2 seconds. Oscar, hold that thought. We'll move on to that in a second.
Have you started the stream on Facebook?
Yeah, it should be up.
Okay. Okay, let me just check.
Yeah. Well, check that before we move topic, because I think I spelled hero wrong first of all. But it's
Calin's going towards cocaine over here, I think, and heroin.
I'm
yeah, the stream on Facebook is live. I will confirm.
Yeah.
He's back live.
He's Asian hero. So Oscar's asked, 1939 Germany blitzes to Moscow. Could it have worked out, do you reckon? The thing is, I think there was much more holding Germany back than just doing that instantly. I think it would have been even worse, because they if they would have instantly gone to war with Russia rather than take down France first and then go to war with Russia, which was a problem that sorry, let me restart my train of thought. In World War One, Germany made the mistake of starting a two-war front against Russia, obviously on the east, and France on the west. So I think that if Germany would have started a two-war front, as they did in World War One, with Russia on the east and France on the west, I think that they would have been defeated much quicker than they did in like our timeline, because this is technically alternate history. I think they would have suffered defeat even quicker, because they would have had to split. Yeah, so what the conclusion of what I'm saying is, because because World War II Germany took the war one front at a time, obviously until D-Day. They ended up doing much better than they would have if they would have started an all-out war on both sides at the start of the war, considering that even though Russia was not prepared in 1939, they would have still have had a strong enough force to beat back half of the Wehrmacht, whereas we know that in 1941, when Russia was really invaded, the Soviet Union struggled against the full force of the Wehrmacht, but they were able to beat them back. So if they were able to beat back the full force, or nearly the full force, because obviously some of the troops were in North Africa fighting in that front, and some were helping out in Italy due to the invasion of Sicily. If they were to if Russia could beat back the let's say 80% of the Wehrmacht force, because I'm not exactly sure on the numbers. I'm sure that if Germany would have started the two-war front in 1939, that they would have lost even faster. Andrei, if you want to...
I have 2 points on that. I would say that first of all, it wouldn't have worked out for Germany to actually blitzkrieg straight to Moscow, because there's too much land to cover. Simply as that.
True.
And just like I mentioned before, when we were talking about Antonescu and why Romania was such an important country to Germany, it's because of the gas resources that they had. So imagine the amount of diesel required to actually do such a thing. And second of all, I would say that rather than doing that, they would have had a better chance going with France, taking over France, and then going straight for Britain with all their force.
I mean, without the help of the American Navy, which didn't play a role in our current war, but let's say that in a scenario where they do go straight for... Well, let me change the title of the topic first, because it still says Antonescu. Nazi invasion of Russia, 1939. I still think that even... I mean, obviously there were some downfalls that came about at the beginning of the war with the German Navy, which meant that they weren't strong enough to actually stage a proper invasion of Britain. And let's say in the best case scenario, where their main flagship wasn't destroyed quite early in the war, and where they did manage to keep up production and didn't run out of resources, they might have had a chance to conquer Britain, and then maybe, let's say, they would turn around to go to the other front. But with Britain out, it would have been a done war.
With the resources exhausted to actually conquer Britain, Russia would have just had an easy job.
Yeah, no, that would have been
with the help of other smaller European nations.
That would be if Russia would have invaded while, just in the time window just after the invasion of Britain, because otherwise you could still argue that if Germany took a few years to rebuild and regain some resources and then started a war against Russia, they might have had a much easier job.
Wouldn't you think that the Americans would have pushed the Russians to invade Germany in that case?
The thing is, before the Pearl Harbor attack, and this applies for World War I as well, before the Lusitania attack, America played on the sidelines. They didn't have such a big role as it does in the modern day in the international community. And I think that they, obviously before the war, America had quite good relations with a lot of businesses in Germany, and although Britain was an ally, if there was no direct threat to America, there might have never been any involvement in that war if America didn't get attacked at Pearl Harbor, which means in this timeline, let's say, because Pearl Harbor was instigated by the Japanese, and let's say the Japanese didn't end up attacking Pearl Harbor, and the UK was attacked by Germany, I don't think the attack of the UK by Germany and their conquering would have pushed America into the war.
True.
because they did play a sleeping giant role, their quotes again, because they kept to themselves for most of the century, even during World War One.
But at the same time, they did supply a lot of resources, a lot of munition, a lot of tanks, a lot of guns, a lot of supplies as food to Russians. I don't know how much that affected America, but I think it was just a scratch. It wasn't really such a big dent in the economy.
That wasn't even a dent. I think it made the economy even better, because at the end of the day, the economy runs on things being produced, and America was exporting a lot of goods. They weren't giving them out for free to Russia. They were giving some things for free, but obviously Russia ended up paying they sold the UK destroyers for pennies. I'm guessing obviously they didn't make a lot of money on it, especially when selling towards the Allies, but they would have in this alternate history scenario, that I think they would have just stood on the sidelines and made money.
Possible.
Any
other inputs from the comments on this certain topic?
Nothing, but I missed the timestamp for when we stopped talking about Antonescu. So
you'll get it back. Don't worry, we'll find it after.
Yeah, I'm gonna note this down to. I think this
for those who would want to re-see this. In this case, I don't know, or if you have to go and you didn't have the time to see the whole stream, there will be some parts of the stream of different topics put on YouTube, as well as the whole stream.
Yeah. Well, we will try to split it up into topics, so we will also upload it to our Facebook in its topic form for all of our Facebook followers to look at during the time that we upload them. I mean, we have been streaming for how long? An hour and 47 minutes. Do you want to continue, or do you want to wrap it up? Because I have no more ideas in mind right now.
I think for the first stream we can wrap it up. We had quite a bit of discussion. We jumped from topic to topic, and I think it's definitely an idea of having a. Sorry, my phone. There's definitely an idea of having maybe a podcast for alternate history.
Yeah,
it's really interesting, and I think a lot of people would like that. Also, for those that are still watching, do tell us what other topics would you like us to touch upon in the future podcasts.
You can always just send us an email. All of our emails are everywhere, or just send an email to the history of yesterday @gmail.com with an idea for a topic for us to discuss next podcast, which is probably going to be this weekend, depending on our schedule. But I think next podcast is going to be I'll send you an email with an in-depth review. Thank you, Oscar. I think next podcast is going to be about war crimes, if I remember correctly. We're going to have a look at war crimes, specifically in World War II, on both the Axis and Ally side, because both the Axis and Allies did commit war crimes during World War II, and a lot of people just talk about the Axis war crimes rather than the Allies. Obviously, the Allies didn't commit the same level, but that's an argument to have next podcast. I think we could explore alternate history in the second upcoming podcast, but that's a topic that we can discuss in the next podcast's outro.
Also, before you wrap it all up and end it, I want to say, please do tell us how we can improve the podcast. This is the first time to do bear with us. We haven't done this before. We're starting to get used to all the equipment, all the software, all the bells and whistles. And any criticism is welcome. We are more of writers rather than spokespeople.
Yeah. So with that, I'm gonna play the our intro again, and gonna end the stream there. Thank you for you guys watching it. I hope you come listen to us next time we have this podcast talking about war crimes, and hope you have a good day. Stay safe, everyone.
Goodbye.